you want to literally milk that for all it's worth. Hi, my name is Jem and I am a twin mama. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that really annoyed me when I was pregnant with my twins. Why is it that you can find really kind of clickbaity videos that tell you, oh, here's how I pump a litre of breast milk a day. Here's how I pump a litre and a half of breast milk a day for my twins, for my triplets, or, you know, and it's just, okay, great, I need to know how to do that. And you go on these videos and it's just a video of somebody's child running around the garden and you're like, hey, I need to know about the breasts, tell me how to do it. And they're not really that forthcoming with how they do it or if they actually do it. I wanted to breastfeed my twins. I think I definitely recommend trying to breastfeed rather than exclusively pump for twin babies or more than twin babies, because it's really hard work. You know, with pumping I struggled and I only actually managed 8 weeks in the end, and in that 8 weeks I managed to do a litre and a half of breast milk expressed exclusively every single day from probably the 9th day onwards. And that was really hard work. It was excruciatingly painful as well. And it won't necessarily be painful and as much hard work for everyone. Every woman is different and you will have different yields of breast milk. And in particular for me, I feel like my big stumbling block was that I have got fatty breast milk. Whoa! Really fatty, like orange breast milk. And that wasn't just to begin with, that wasn't just the colostrum phase, that just went on. You know, I would stain my baby's bibs with how fatty my breast milk was. And that's great in terms of development. That, you know, surely is going to be full of all the kind of amino acids and great stuff that the babies need. So it was magic in that regard. But long term, I suffered. But if you are going to exclusively pump, or you're going to do some pumping, and you've got twins on the way, yeah, it's gonna be hard work, you know, whichever way you look at it. How much hard work, I don't know, but it will be hard work. And I want to tell you how I did a litre and a half every day. So 1500 millilitres every day is, you know, damn good, whether you're having, you know, just one baby or two baby or three babies. You know, getting a litre and a half from your breasts every day is really good work, no matter how many babies you've got. I struggled in particular because one of my breasts super milky, the other one 10% the amount of milk. If I had relatively even boobs, I could have maybe done as much as 2.5 litres a day, which would have actually solved a lot of problems for me, and I would have been able to carry on probably for a bit longer, or just had an amazing stockpile so that I could have fed my babies a bit longer, even if I did have to give up. One thing that's really important with expressing that kind of volume of milk, which you will need if you've got twins, because they eat, you know, it's maybe only 40 mils for the first day or so, you know, little tiny portions of milk they will have, but then it just goes whoosh up, and my babies were drinking easily 120 mils by the end of probably week 1, and they're eating that, you know, maybe 8-10 times a day. They were just voracious babies, and they didn't really keep climbing for the rest of the 8 weeks. It was only tiny increments, but I still needed roughly 2 litres a day to feed them, and I couldn't make that much. But the litre and a half I could make, we then topped that up with formula, and it wasn't ideal, but it was a really big achievement. And don't knock yourself if you can't get anywhere near that, because getting any breast milk when you've actually got the juggling aspect of having twins, that in itself is great work. You know, be proud of yourself. If you want to pump a lot of breast milk, you are going to need to nourish your body. You need water all the time. I was so thirsty, and you need to go with your thirst. All the experts say, if you're thirsty, drink. And if you're kind of, meh, don't really know I'm thirsty, just have a drink anyway. I was easily drinking 6 litres a day, and I wasn't even going for a wee that often. So my body really needed that. Just, I would have become an arid desert inside my body if I had not drunk that much water. I kept to a pattern with it so that I knew I was getting enough. So every time I pumped, I drank 500 mils while I pumped. Then, in that space between the pumping session, I'd make sure I drank another 500 mils. And that's just the pattern I kept. So when you pump, and then the gap between the pumps, each time drink half a litre. That's what worked for me. You might need slightly less, you might need slightly more. Go with your body. If your body is thirsty, drink. And you'll regret it if you don't, because you'll quite quickly notice that your boobs will kind of get knotty and lumpy, and that's because you're dehydrated. And also you won't get the yield that you want. In order to make milk, you need to have something to work with. You need that water as a base for your milk. The second most important part of nourishing yourself is just a few simple foods in your diet that can encourage breast milk production. The most classic things that people tend to talk about are oatmeal every day. Having some porridge is, you know, super easy. And I used to actually have porridge in the middle of the night when I was breast pumping, just to kind of stimulate my body at a time of day when your body is naturally on kind of high output for breast milk. It was a good time to give it that boost. I also used to do flaxseed or linseed. They're both the same thing. You want to go for stuff that's kind of making your life easy. Try and buy the stuff that's already pre-ground, and then you can just chuck it into whatever you're eating. Chuck a little bit into your porridge, into some flapjacks made with oats, which again will help to boost your breast milk supply. You can sprinkle it in pretty much anything you want to. You can sprinkle it into your spaghetti bolognese, whatever you want to sprinkle it into. You can hide it in quite a few things, but don't go too mad with it, otherwise you will taste it. Just try and sort of stick to, you know, a few teaspoons here and there scattered in things throughout the day, and that'll top you up really nicely. I also am a firm believer that milk itself helps to produce breast milk, so I had, you know, regular portions of milk throughout the day, whether that was used to make some porridge or just to have a hot chocolate or a little milkshake. Just topping myself up with a bit of cow's milk definitely helped me to feel like I was giving my body something, you know, a good base to work with. And a lot of people seem to think that cow's milk is a really good way of increasing your supply. The other thing that I used was a supplement. You might have heard of brewer's yeast. A lot of people use it because it's just a really good vitamin powerhouse in general, so they tend to use it in just normal everyday life. But if you are breastfeeding, it can supposedly, you know, kind of boost things, ramp up your production levels of breast milk. I was taking it every day. I think I was taking 2 tablets 3 times a day, which was within the normal limits that you were allowed to take for that particular supplement. And I didn't have any side effects with it. Some people, you know, say that it kind of gives them a bit of like a iffy tummy, maybe like a bit of a sore tummy, because obviously it is yeasty. Some people say that it can increase the chances of them ending up with thrush and things like that, like cystitis. I didn't have that problem, luckily, and I am quite prone to, you know, any kind of infection in this world, and I got on really well with brewer's yeast. But did it increase my production? I don't really know. All I know is I started taking it probably around the 7-day mark, and, you know, obviously we know that I kind of averaged 1.5 litres of milk every day. Some days I would go as much as like 1800 millilitres, and that would kind of surprise me even. And it's kind of, I don't know whether that can be credited to anything other than dumb luck really, rather than the bruise yeast. But bruise yeast is so cheap that I'd recommend you give it a go anyway, once your doctor has said, yeah, that's okay to try that. Because, you know, with it being so thrifty anyway, if it does work for you, then amazing. And if not, you've only spent a few quid and it's not really going to make that much of a dent in your wallet. And then the other major food group that people always talk about for boosting your breast milk supply is barley. I hate barley. Barley is disgusting. Barley, to me, like little bogies in whatever casserole I have chucked them into. I'm not into barley, but there are ways around it. You can try things like Ovaltine, or just, you know, a normal generic malt based drink in the supermarket. I ended up just buying like the Sainsbury's malt drink, and that is made with barley. So that was my way of kind of chucking some barley in, because I really hate barley. But if you don't mind barley, try things like adding it to like homemade rice puddings, maybe even homemade porridges, and you know, you're getting that extra boost that way. They're the only foods that I deem to be particularly worth your time with boosting breast milk supply. The other things that you need to do are just disciplines, really. So you need to make sure you pump at least 6 times a day. But in the beginning, you need to pump ideally 12 times a day. And it will be exhausting, and you will be doing it, you know, a lot during the night when you'd much rather be asleep. And when your babies are waking you up anyway. So it's really hard work, and it's really frustrating, and you will be super tired initially. But if you can go hardcore with it, you might only need to do that for the first 2 weeks. That's definitely how it was for me. After that point, I definitely felt like my milk stabilized, and I knew exactly how much I should be getting out of my body in each of my then 6 sessions that I had dropped it down to. I always made sure that 4 of those sessions were during the day, starting very early, sort of around 7 AM. And then in the night, I would make sure that I always did 2 sessions, somewhere between 12 and 5. And those sessions are super important. Those are the ones you never want to miss, even when you have dropped down your sessions, because that is the time of day when babies like to wake up, and our bodies naturally prepare for baby wanting a drink in the middle of the night. So your body will make a lot of milk at that time of night. It just goes into a bit turbo overdrive, and you want to literally milk that for all it's worth. And at that time of night, I used to take extra bottles along with my electric breast pump, because quite often I would overflow whilst I was concentrating on something else, and I would need to quickly change the bottles. So that's actually, even though it's annoying to be up in the night breast pumping, that's a great time of day when you will have lots of breast milk, and you'll feel super proud of yourself. The other thing I really swear by, and this is again one of those things where it's really different for every single woman. For me, I was told by so many different women, and I saw in so many different videos, oh, just pump for 20 minutes, then stop. That did not work. I needed to completely drain my breasts. If I didn't drain my breasts, my body did not think that I needed as much milk, and the next time I pumped, I would get less, and then the time after that, even less. So for me, the key was definitely full drainage of the breasts. Now, if you don't really know what that means, if you haven't breastfed or breast pumped before, when you get to that full drainage point, your breast will then literally feel kind of empty. It will feel soft and supple and squishy, and that's how you know that all the milk, or the vast majority of the milk, has been successfully drained. I also found that the really important thing for me was to do compressions towards the end of the pumping session. So I really squeezed and rubbed and pushed down on my breast tissues all around, all directions, to try and find if there was kind of any residual pockets of milk that I could feel. They feel kind of knotty and lumpy. Push those out so that I really have successfully drained my breast, because your pump doesn't necessarily do all the hard work for you. Another thing that they really don't tell you in videos or, you know, guides on the internet or anywhere, and, you know, no midwives or anybody helped me with this, is the correct time for you to pump. Because I said, you know, pump until you're empty. If you're finding that the whole kind of setting a specific time doesn't work for you, definitely did not work for me. But my magic number was always very, very big, and that's part of the reason why I had to give up breastfeeding, because I know lots of women who are able to successfully drain their breasts in about 12 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. My average was an hour and 10 minutes for me to successfully drain my breast. And if I didn't do that, again, my milk would start to drop down really rapidly, and I would get lots of fatty lumps in my breasts that would then cause me lots of pain. So an hour and 10 minutes was my magic number. I can't tell you what your magic number will be, but go with it. Whatever your number is whatever it is. You might be lucky and you'll be able to work really quickly, or you might be really slow and sluggish the way that my body was. Again, I think that was down to the fattiness of my milk. So it's a double-edged sword. If you do have fatty milk, on one hand very nutritious, on the other hand lots of problems, lots of time consumption. If you're using a electric breast pump that has variable speeds and settings, which I recommend that you definitely do, you can simulate the way a baby would latch onto your breast and trigger your breasts to start releasing milk. So if you have variable settings, I recommend that you do the following as you begin each pumping session. You want to use the fastest speed on the very lowest setting of pressure. So it'll be a very rapid but gentle sucking, and it should not be have any pain or discomfort whatsoever when you're using that setting. It should just feel a little bit tickly, and you should then feel, oh, that moment when your breasts trigger, when you kind of get that tingle and you're like, okay, that's worked. And as your breast milk starts to flow, you can then vary the settings. I used to end up using almost the highest pressure and somewhere in the medium settings for speed. But some people say that the best thing to do is to actually go the exact opposite of the way you started out. So you started out your session with high speed and low pressure, and then you want to go the complete opposite way and then go low speed, high pressure. I had to think about it for a moment then. And again, that setting is actually really good because you are very unlikely to feel any discomfort with that particular setting. It's when you tend to do things like using high speed, high pressure, that's when you'll feel discomfort. And never ever breast pump if you're feeling discomfort. Obviously sometimes you might feel discomfort because you've got breast lumps where the milk has gathered. That's fine. It is a good idea to pump even if that is going on, but on very gentle settings. But in general, when you have gotten lovely healthy breasts, you want to use a setting that feels 100% comfortable, not, oh, it's slightly uncomfortable, and definitely not, oh, that's painful. It won't help you to produce more breast milk. It'll actually make your body kind of go, oh, ah, ah, and kind of seize up the breast milk production. So definitely don't do that. The other really important thing with using a manual or an electric breast pump is to have a breast flange that fits really well. Now, what do I mean by that? Everyone will have different advice, but you kind of have to use common sense. And if you were to go on, say, the website that manufactured your particular breast pump, you'll find that actually they tend to recommend that people use the smaller breast flanges. And that's my advice to you. Don't think that just because you kind of visually think that you have large nipples, they might not be as large as you actually think they are. And you also have to factor in the way your nipples behave once they're in the breast pump. For me, I thought I had large nipples, but they behaved very differently once I was using a breast pump. So I was using completely the wrong flanges for quite some time. I was actually using the largest flanges that you could get for my particular breast pump, and I actually ended up going down to the second from smallest size. So I was using, you know, about 3 sizes too big for me. And the thing you want to aim for is that you want your nipple, once you've started the pumping motion, you want your nipple to be perfectly centered, and you want it to be sliding down the flange ever so slightly in a way that is not rubbing against the plastic of the flange, but it does need to be super snug. So you don't want to be fully touching it. You want only the sort of base part that's closest to your body to be touching the plastic, and then the rest of it should be almost touching but not quite. That's a really good snug fit. You'll get really good suction power, and it's when you start using really big flanges, if you don't fit in them properly, then you start to lose that suction power because it's not actually sucking onto you that strongly anymore. So they're all my top tips. That is exactly how I managed to pump 1.5 litres of breast milk every day for almost my full 8 weeks of pumping. And ultimately I did have to give it up, and I will explain my reasons why in another video and help you out if you are having some of the problems that I had. I would have loved to have pumped for as long as my babies needed it, and I would have loved to have been able to breastfeed, but unfortunately, you know, the stars didn't align for us in that way. And the fact that I managed to get 1.5 litres of breast milk for them every day was just such a blessing, and I hope that you will be able to achieve the same thing for your twins or your multiples, or even if you've just got one baby. Doing well at breast pumping, especially if you're doing it exclusively, it can be so tough, and you will do amazingly no matter what you manage to achieve. And don't think, you know, after 2 days that, you know, you've achieved all you can achieve. Stick with it for just a bit longer. Try and give it at least 2 weeks to try and gauge what your results are going to be like, and hopefully you will be able to just climb up in how many meals you get each day. Thank you for sticking around and listening to me ramble on about breasts. If you want to hear more about twin pregnancy, or even just the annoyances of pregnancy in general, please like and subscribe, and I will see you very soon for another video.